As you probably already saw in the last Street Racing Channel video, me and Billy went up to Otto, Ohio and picked up a '69 C10 pickup truck that we plan to build and give away. But in the meantime, it's clearly got a few issues that we need to take a look at. And since it kills me to watch my kids beat on the carburetor with a rock, that's the first thing I plan to work on Wednesday morning. Since Billy's S10's in on the lift, we nosed the old 69 into the other side of the shop and pulled the air cleaner off to start diagnosing all of the C10's symptoms. Of course, the carburetor was the first thing to be blamed, so Tanner swapped a 2-barrel off the 307 in the shop that came off a perfectly good running 70 Nova. And as it turns out, the carburetor wasn't the problem at all, but we'll get to that in a minute. Robbie's back. You've been sick for 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
Ugh.
Well, I thought it was good last Tuesday when I came back. I was here for a few hours, started feeling really crappy again. By the time I got home, I couldn't do anything, and it's been very horrible.
Robbie's pulling the fuel pump off my 307 to put on the truck because the fuel pump that was on the truck has a stuck pressure relief valve, and so the excessive fuel pressure caused the carburetor to flood and overrun the needle and seat. Once we replaced the fuel pump, the truck fired up and idled without a single problem. It's really a pretty neat old truck. It's got power steering, power brakes.
Everything works, like battery gauge in here, temperature, oil pressure, even the belt wipers.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Tanner finished putting the air cleaner back on and double checked it for leaks. Is it ready for a test drive?
Yep, fire it up.
Keep your fingers back. We don't need any of that kind of stuff.
Alright.
Sounds good. Now that it's finally time for a test drive, guess who's first to get in the truck? Hey, the wipers even work. Can't hardly see out the windshield, but the wipers work. Of course, once I put the truck in reverse, I found it has another problem. Oh my God, the brakes are terrible.
We'll fix that.
Holy shit.
We know a guy.
When I say terrible, I mean damn near non-existent.
Oh!
Okay, there we finally got to do something.
Yeah. What do you think, June?
Holy shit, it does drive good though.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have any brakes. Billy didn't say anything about not having brakes.
Well, you know.
Brakes aren't that important to Billy.
No.
Wait a minute. It's got power brakes. I saw it's got a power brake booster out there on the... I wonder if the vacuum's not hooked up.
It might not be.
Let's go check that out.
Yep.
The brake pedal on this truck is hard as a rock, and that typically means there's a vacuum problem. I wonder why it doesn't have any vacuum.
That's weird.
We don't have any brakes. We also don't have any vacuum. Shut it off. So for some reason, it should definitely have vacuum off that port, but it does not have any vacuum. So I don't know whether that's soot plugged up in that port or what. Grab me a little screwdriver. Let's stick a screwdriver in there. See if we can't knock something loose. I couldn't get anything out of that front port, so Tanner got out his all-16 wrench and went to work on the back one.
What you doing there, Steve?
It's not turning. It's not turning.
Eventually, we got the hose connected to the back port, and it was time to try it. Ready? Oh!
She's sucking.
Once we had the vacuum line hooked up, I made a few adjustments to the carburetor, and the truck sounds better than ever. Tanner couldn't wait to jump in it and test the brakes.
Real back of the line. 307.
At this point, I felt a little more comfortable turning Tanner loose behind the wheel to let him take the truck down the road for a test drive. Now that all the vacuum leaks are fixed and the brakes actually work, this old 69 C10 runs and drives literally like a new truck. Although it does seem to have a little bit of a bump steer problem, otherwise this thing drives great. How's the brakes feel now?
Better than my normal brake job.
So I feel pretty confident the truck's roadworthy now. While Tanner, June Pup, and I were out on our test drive in the C10, I got a phone call from our local tire shop, letting me know that the front tires that Tanner dropped off for my dually were ready to be picked up. So we took the old 69 straight up to the tire shop to go pick up my tires and wheels. The tires that were on the front of the truck took a lot of weight to balance. Tony up at GT Tire assured me that these new tires would drive much better than the Mastercrafts that we just took off. So I was pretty excited to get back to the shop and get these wheels and tires put back on my dually and take it up the road for a test drive and see how long it takes for my new hubcaps to fall off. Well, hopefully those tires don't come off. The next morning, I got a call from JAXWAX letting me know that Billy's 55 would be ready to pick up this afternoon. So Tanner and I got the S10 fired up to move it out back and make room in my shop for the 55 when we bring it home. If you remember, that car had some problems with the carburetor while we were at sick week, and the last thing I want is to watch videos of my kids beating on that with a rock, especially after all the work that JAXWAX and Tidy Rides have put into getting this car detailed and polished. They literally take care of our cars just as well as they take care of their own every time we bring something in there. And they have definitely knocked this one out of the park. If you didn't know any better, you would swear that someone has stripped and repainted this entire car. From top to bottom, front to back, this car looks fresh. You've outdone yourself this time. I honestly can't thank these guys enough for everything they've done and continue to do for our family. So this one was a little bit of a challenge. We threw you a little bit of a curveball this time, didn't we?
Yeah, you did.
So this car is kind of a Heinz 57 of paints and materials. Some of it's base clear, some of it's single stage lacquer, some of it's who knows.
Who knows?
And you didn't know that until you took the buffer to it and black started coming off on the buffer pad.
The pad turned black and I was like, oh my gosh. The first part was clear coat and we got to the single stage and we got a little scared for a second.
Right, so you started with the top and the trunk lid, which is red and it's base clear.
It is base clear. The hood and the fenders are also base clear on the front.
Oh, really?
The doors in the lower half of the car are single stage paint. So it was fun. It was fun.
You're trying to figure out what the heck's going on here while you're polishing this thing.
Yeah, it was scary to see the pad turn black on a what we thought was a clear coat car.
Well, it looks beautiful, man. Thank you so much. I'm really, really stoked to take this thing home so we can start working on it and get it ready to start racing it again.
Should be more aerodynamic now.
So what do you got for me here?
Well, this is our special secret sauce. This is the Bill secret sauce. This is coming in our box. Jax in the Box is going to be a special one this month because it's the Old Man's Garage Street Racing Channel Takeover box. So got some really cool stuff, including our first test product that everybody's going to get to try if they're subscribed to the box.
So that's my secret sauce metal polish.
That's right, secret sauce metal polish. We're going to put on there. That's one thing that everybody talks about in your videos is they always see you using the metal polish. So we were going to give them a version of yours and see if they like it.
So if you want to get this stuff, JAXWAX.com.
Yep,
and you're going to have
a Jax in the Box subscription box, and you subscribe, $39.99, and you will get a box full of some goodies this month.
So what's the subscription about?
So the subscription is just a curated box every month. It goes out automatically every month.
Oh, so you get, if you subscribe, it's a monthly thing.
Yep, it's a monthly box that you get all kinds of different stuff. Like this month will be the takeover box that comes with, every one of them comes with a t-shirt. They come with products, exclusive products that you can only get in the box. So a lot of times we'll do like test products in there. So we always have people that ask us, hey, we would like to try this. So before we actually bring something out, we're going to put it in the box, let people test it and see what they think. And then just all kinds of different cool stuff every month that you can get. Keychains, swags, hat, a lot of products, towels, just different stuff that we have every month.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Check it out.
So this is the next one.
Next on the list.
Next on the list.
Starting
I can't
tomorrow,
wait.
We'll be tearing off emblems and everything.
Really?
Yep.
Gonna start on it tomorrow? Okay. I've only got one emblem left that I haven't brought in, and that's that one on the grill. I'll bring it in, but it's real simple. It's just got 2 speed nuts on the back. It's easy to get to, no big deal. But whatever you need to take apart, just go ahead and take care of it, and I'll come in and help if you need me to. It's no big deal. But I'm really excited because the rear end from Strange is done, and the disc brakes are on their way. I'm ready to jerk that stuff out of this thing and get started putting all the good drivetrain parts in it.
Well, I will say, Zach probably won't say it, but I will say this is by far the best one you brought us.
Oh,
Usually they're just in way worse shape than
right.
We're starting way above board on this.
What do you think?
That looks so much better, dude. The black is just, they got that really nice. It used to be really, really scratched up and kind of dull. Now it's just like glass.
It looks like somebody painted it.
Yeah. Can't believe it's my car. That's a nice car.
So now that the car's finally back home, I want to start helping Billy get this car all sorted out. The previous owner mentioned to Billy if he ever takes that Dominator off, he'd like to have it back. And since ATM wants my assistance in developing a street Dominator, it's a perfect opportunity to update Billy's 55 with a new modern billet carburetor. But the carburetor itself isn't the only thing on this car that needs updated. It desperately needs a new throttle cable bracket, return spring setup, and wide open throttle switch. Billy also mentioned that he'd like to update the valve covers and breathers, so he had me pick up these black powder-coated ones, as well as a new set of valve cover gaskets. But I still need to run into JAGS this morning to pick up the new throttle cable bracket, and since the roads are dry, I'd really like to test my truck and see how the tires do. So we need to go to JAGS and pick up some parts for this thing so we can put it back together and start, what do we call this?
I would say it out loud, but I'm not going to.
There's a lot of little things on that 55 Chevy that need to be taken care of before we try and take it out someplace and race it and end up suffering from the problems that we had when we took the car to New Orleans and also to Florida for Sick Week.
So what do you think's going on with those rock rods on that thing?
Well, you've got an engine that's built to turn 8,500 RPM for 3 seconds and not 3,200 RPM for 1,000 miles. To turn 8,000 RPM, the valve train components all need to be lightweight because the heavier they are, the heavier the valve spring has to be to control it. The heavier the valve spring is, the harder it is on valve stems. It's also harder on valve retainers and keepers and everything else. Lightweight valves with thin valve stems really can't stand a lot of valve spring pressure that's required to control heavy valve train components. So you make everything as light as you possibly can to turn high RPM, but that makes it weak to run endurance races or like drive 1,000 miles on Sick Week. It's hard on stuff, So typically a street engine would have had, stainless shaft rockers, which are heavier, but street engines aren't, they're not typically set up to turn 8,500 RPM. So it's kind of what you get with a race engine on the street. Typically, if you're going to try and run a big block Chevy or a small block Chevy nitrous combination on the street, your camshaft profile and your valve train components better be up to the task. And of course, there's other things to be considered as well, like wrapping the headers to protect the master cylinder and brake lines from excessive heat. Of course, you also need a good carburetor that's tuned to drive on the street without fouling plugs, but yet has good throttle response and obviously excellent wide open throttle performance, which is why ATM has asked me to take this race spec prototype 1050 Dominator and set it up to run on the street. Since my main concern is that the car will cruise around good on the primaries, I swapped a 7.5 power valve into the front metering block and jetted the front jets down from 105s to 95s. We also had to make a minor modification to the carburetor linkage so that the JAGS throttle bracket will work, and we had to make some adjustments to the gas pedal so that we could get wide open throttle. Once we had all that taken care of, it was time to turn on the fuel pump and check for leaks. I thought it took an abnormally long time for the fuel pressure to come up and for the fuel system to fill the bowls on the carburetor. But eventually the fuel pressure did come up, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be one of the next things that we look into. Once we had the engine fired up, I checked for leaks and made some adjustments to the idle mixture screws as well as the idle speed on both the primary and secondary throttle shafts. Although I can tell the engine is in dire need of a valve adjustment, it does have decent rhythm, excellent throttle response, and the exhaust doesn't smell like it's idling rich. So now there's only one thing left to do: take it for a test drive. my main concern right now is that the car cruises around and doesn't foul plugs, and so far so good on that. It has pretty good manners, but I've only ever driven this car one time since Billy bought it, and I never had an opportunity to drive it during sick week. So I'm anxious to see what Tanner and Billy have to say about it once they get a chance to drive it.
Sounds way better.
You think it sounds better?
It's way more like crispy sounding.
What do you think?
Way better.
You think it is?
It used to like at all RPMs below like 3,000, and now it's like really nice.
Well, that other carburetor didn't have a power valve in it,
Yeah,
so it was really rich all the time.
that'll do it.
There's nothing worse than trying to drive around in a good-looking car that sounds fast and drives absolutely miserable. Constantly trying to clean the carburetor out and staring at the gauges, praying to God that it doesn't overheat, is absolutely no fun.
At this speed in Florida, this thing would really struggle. It kept loading up because it doesn't have any power valves, and it build up too much fuel, and you'd have to put it in neutral and clean it out to get the fuel out of it.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing Billy revving it up all the time.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. Black smoke everywhere.
You never know when you're going to get stuck in a situation like this where it's got to idle and
Yeah.
just barely move up the road forever and not load up.
Yeah. It gets it first and second, the third gear, it's just like, nah, I don't want to.
Runs out of fuel. Well, let's pull it in the shop, put it on the lift.
Figure that problem out.
Yeah, we'll start working on this fuel system problem. So what we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and try and remove this fuel filter, and we're going to try and cap this fuel cell off so that we don't drench ourselves in the whole shop in gasoline. But we're going to try and take this off and take this fuel filter apart so we can see if the fuel filter itself is a problem or we've got another problem.
Yep.
All right, so we got the we got this off, and I'm holding it with my finger so that we don't drain the whole gas tank out. And Tanner's looking for the correct cap. Well, unfortunately, once the guys started working in the new shop out back, they've been cabbaging a lot of my fittings, and a lot of my stuff has disappeared, which left me and Tanner in quite a predicament.
It's in my armpit.
I guess I didn't have the right fitting.
I'll bet that race gas feels real good on your arm.
Yeah, it feels pleasant.
We finally managed to get this fuel filter off and get it apart, but not before Tanner got a bath in gasoline, so I ended up going out back and getting him a change of clothes out of the merch shop. What shall we find? Oh,
Oh, look at that. And that right there is why you don't run foam in your fuel tank.
look at that. So needless to say, I think we found why the fuel pressure was slow to come up, and at the very least, probable cause as to why the 55 wouldn't make a full pass the last couple of days at sick week. So Steve-O took it around the block, and he seems to think that it runs better than it did before. I can't tell because I hardly ever drove it before it went to sick week, and I didn't drive it at all during sick week. So we'll see. Go see what you think.
Yeah. It feels like it actually feels smoother.
Yeah. It's not trying to cackle and load up on fuel and
Yeah.
everything else. Still ain't over, so it must be the fuel pump.
Gotta be the fuel pump.
It does feel better on the tip end though.
Yeah, it definitely feels rowdy like it used to.
It's gonna run good when we get it lined out.
Yeah,
It's much better cruising around, that's for sure.
yeah. One thing your dad did was he lowered the jets a little bit in the front and then put a power valve in it, and that's all he changed. Everything else is how it came from ATM.
You do a really nice job.
I'd say it feels like we're back in Florida, but we're wearing sweatshirts and jeans with the windows up.
Yeah. Last time we drove it.
Yeah, definitely not Florida weather.
Okay, so what are your thoughts?
It drives around, cruises a lot better. Tip in is a lot better. But it's still landing over in high gear, so obviously we have a fuel delivery issue.
So here's my concern about the fuel system on this car. I don't know what the condition of the fuel pump is right now. That's unknown.
It's
But
an older Edelbrock.
Yeah. But here's the problem. The fuel pump is deadheaded into the regulator. So what that means is basically the pump is at max pressure all the time. There's nothing being returned back to the tank. And that's fine if you're just going to fire it up and bracket race it or, make short trips. But when you run thousands of miles or 1,000 miles in this case, yeah. So without returning any of that pressure back to the tank,
It builds up.
yeah, it runs at max pressure right against the pressure relief valve that's internal in the pump. It runs right against that all the time when it really doesn't need to. So what I'm going to do is put a new fuel pump on it and put a return style regulator on it so that the pump only has to work to build, say, 6 or 7 pounds of fuel pressure, and then whatever else is just returning,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best solution to that.
I think that would keep the fuel cooler too, usually.
Right. It'll return the fuel when it's in constant rotation. So that's the next step. But it drives around better and cruises and...
It looks beautiful.
Oh, I know it looks beautiful. But it drives good. That's the main thing. And I noticed that when you start it up, like the exhaust doesn't stink as bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like burning your eyes and...
Yeah, I was telling Tanner, I wish it drove like that on sick week.